The rain hit the pavement hard, making tiny puddles shine under the buzzing street lights. Ethan pulled his thin jacket tighter as he pressed his back against the brick wall of Joe's diner. Closed now for hours. The sign in the window said, open 6 a.m., but that seemed like forever away. He was 16, cold, and had been on his own for 3 days now. Ethan touched his side and winced. The bruises from his dad's last angry outburst were still fresh, turning from deep purple to a sickly yellow at the edges. He dug into his pocket and pulled out all the money he had left in the world. 2 10, a 5, and 2 $1 bills. $27 wouldn't get him far, but it was better than going back home. The smell of fried food from the nearby truck stop made his stomach growl. He hadn't eaten since morning, just a candy bar he'd bought at a gas station 50 miles back. A big semi-truck rumbled past, its wheels splashing through a puddle that nearly soaked his worn-out sneakers. Ethan jumped back just in time. Keep moving, or get moving, a gruff voice called out. A police car rolled slowly past, the officer inside eyeing him with suspicion through the rain-streaked window. Ethan nodded and started walking. He couldn't afford trouble with the cops. They might call his dad, and that would mean going back to a house where doors slammed and fists flew, where his little sister Emma cried herself to sleep most nights while their dad drank himself into a rage. Across the street, the lights of a 24-hour convenience store glowed like a beacon in the dark, rainy night. Last stop Mini Mart, read the sign with one letter flickering on and off. Ethan counted the change in his pocket. Maybe he could buy a hot coffee and sit inside for a while, at least until the rain let up. The bell above the door jingled as he pushed it open. Warm air hit his face, along with the smell of burnt coffee and cleaning fluid. An old man with gray hair stood behind the counter, barely looking up from his magazine as Ethan entered. The floor was sticky under his shoes, and a radio played soft country music from somewhere in the back. Ethan poured himself a small coffee, adding 4 packets of sugar and lots of cream to make it last longer. The hot cup felt good in his cold hands. He paid the man at the counter and found a spot near the window where he could watch the rainfall. Other late-night customers came and went. A tired L-looking truck driver buying energy drinks. A woman in scrubs grabbing milk on her way home from a hospital shift. Ethan sipped his coffee slowly, making it last each minute he could stay inside was 1 minute less in the cold. That's when he noticed her. A girl about his age stood by the refrigerators, wearing a black leather jacket that seemed too big for her small frame. Her dark hair was pulled back and she kept checking her phone like she was waiting for someone. Something about the way she held herself, shoulders slightly hunched, trying to look smaller, reminded him of Emma. The same careful way of moving through the world, trying not to be noticed. Ethan watched as she picked up a soda, then put it back, checking the price tag. He knew that feeling all too well. Counting every cent when you don't have many to count. The bell above the door jingled again. A man walked in, tall and thin, with a patchy beard and eyes that darted around the store too quickly. He wore a dirty baseball cap and a jacket with too many pockets. But it was the way he moved. Too fast, too focused, that made Ethan sit up straight. The man wasn't browsing. He was heading straight for the girl. Ethan saw it, then the flash of metal in the man's hand as he reached into his pocket. A knife. The girl hadn't noticed yet, her back still turned as she looked at drinks in the fridge. Without thinking, Ethan set down his coffee and stood up. His heart pounded in his chest, telling him to run, to hide, to stay out of trouble. But all he could see was Emma's face in his mind, and he knew he couldn't just watch. Ethan's coffee cup fell to the floor as he moved, hot liquid splashing across his shoes. The man was just steps away from the girl now. Without a plan, Ethan called out, "Hey!" His voice cracked, sounding younger than he meant it to. The man spun around, and now the knife was clearly visible, a hunting blade with a jagged edge that caught the store's fluorescent light. The girl turned too, her eyes growing wide as she saw first the knife, then Ethan, then the man who now stood between them. "Mind your business, kid," the man growled. His breath smelled like cigarettes and something worse. Up close, Ethan could see his bloodshot eyes and the way his hands shook slightly. The girl backed up against the refrigerator doors, the cold glass fogging around her shoulders. Her eyes locked with Ethan's, silently pleading. The store seemed suddenly quiet, even the country music fading into background noise. I think you should leave her alone," Ethan said, his mouth dry. His hands were shaking now, too, and he could feel sweat breaking out on his forehead despite the air conditioning that blew from a vent above. The man laughed, a harsh sound like gravel. "You going to stop me, tough guy?" He took a step toward Ethan, the knife pointed at his chest. "Walk away now. I won't hurt you too bad." Ethan thought about doing just that. He thought about the $27 in his pocket and how he needed to make it last. He thought about his dad's fists and how he'd promised himself he'd never be in a fight again. But then the girl made a small sound, something between a whimper and a gasp, and it sounded so much like Emma that Ethan's body moved before his brain could stop it. He lunged forward, aiming not for the man, but for a display rack of chips that stood between them. It toppled with a crash, bags bursting open and scattering across the floor. The man stumbled, caught off guard, and Ethan used that moment to grab the girl's arm. "Run," he yelled, pulling her toward the front of the store. But the man was quick, grabbing Ethan's jacket from behind and yanking him backward. Ethan's feet slipped on the scattered chips, and he fell hard. The air knocked from his lungs. The knife came down, and Ethan raised his hand to block it. Pain shot through him as the blade sliced across his palm, hot blood spilling onto the dirty linoleum floor. He cried out, clutching his hand to his chest, the cut burning like fire. "What the hell is going on?" The cashier's voice boomed through the store. He held a baseball bat in his hands, moving from behind the counter. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Someone must have called the cops. The man with the knife looked toward the door, then at Ethan on the floor, blood pooling beneath his hand. With a curse, he ran, shoving past the girl and out into the rainy night. The next hour passed in a blur. Police cars with flashing lights, questions Ethan couldn't focus on answering, an ambulance where a woman wrapped his hand in clean white bandages that quickly turned red, the sting of something they put on the cut that hurt worse than the knife had. At the hospital, Ethan sat on an exam table, the paper crinkling under him. His hand throbbed with each heartbeat. A doctor had put 7 stitches in his palm and told him he was lucky the cut wasn't deeper. A police officer stood in the doorway, notebook in hand. "So, you're just passing through. No address, no parents we can call." Ethan looked down at his bandaged hand. "I'm 18. He lied. "I'm on my way to my uncle's place in Carson City." Another lie. The officer didn't look like he believed it, but before he could ask more questions, the door opened again. The girl from the store walked in, followed by a woman in a nurse's uniform. "This is Sarah," the nurse said. "She's been waiting to thank you." Sarah's eyes were red from crying, but she looked calmer now. "You saved me," she said simply. "That guy, he's been following me for days. I think he knew who my dad is. Thought he could get money." Ethan tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "Who's your dad?" "Mike Reeves," she said, watching his face for a reaction. "People call him Ironhead. He's the president of the local Hells Angels." Chapter. Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd heard of the Hells Angels, a motorcycle gang known for being tough and dangerous. Great, he thought. Just what he needed. Trouble with bikers now, too. "My dad will want to thank you," Sarah said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "I should get moving once they let me out of here." He looked at his bandaged hand. "I'm just glad you're okay." But Sarah was already texting on her phone, a small smile forming on her face. Trust me, you'll want to meet him. He takes care of people who help his family. 2 hours later, Ethan walked out of the hospital's front doors, his left hand wrapped in fresh white bandages. The pain pills they'd given him made his head feel fuzzy, but at least his hand didn't hurt as much now. The rain had stopped, but puddles still dotted the parking lot, reflecting the glow of street lights. He took a deep breath of the cool night air, wondering where he would sleep. Maybe he could find a bus stop with a covered bench or an all-night laundromat where he could sit until morning. He dug in his pocket with his good hand to count his money again, but before he could, a sound made him freeze. It started as a low rumble in the distance, like thunder rolling in. But this wasn't thunder. It grew louder, the deep growling sound of many motorcycle engines coming closer. Ethan's heart began to pound as the first bikes rounded the corner, headlights cutting through the darkness. More followed 2 by 2 until the whole street seemed filled with them. The bikers pulled into the hospital parking lot in a perfect line, engine so loud that Ethan could feel the vibration in his chest. There had to be at least 30 motorcycles, maybe more, each one carrying a rider in a black leather vest. Hell's Angels, just like Sarah had said. They parked in a half circle facing the hospital entrance where Ethan stood, frozen in place. The engines cut off one by one, leaving an eerie silence. Ethan thought about running, but his legs wouldn't move. The bikers got off their motorcycles, boots crunching on the wet pavement as they formed a wall of leather, denim, and tattoos. From the center of the group, a giant of a man stepped forward. He was well over 6 feet tall with a thick gray beard and arms covered in colorful tattoos. His leather vest had patches Ethan couldn't read in the dim light, but he knew what they meant. This man was important in the gang. "You the kid?" the big man asked, his voice deep and rough like he'd swallowed gravel. Ethan nodded, his mouth too dry to speak. "I'm Mike Reeves," the man said. "People call me Ironhead." He looked Ethan up and down. "Sarah tells me you saved her from a knife attack." I was just there," Ethan managed to say, his voice small against the wall of bikers. "Anyone would have done it." Ironhead shook his head. "No, kid. Most people would have walked away, minded their own business." He held out a massive hand covered in skull rings. "You saved my little girl." Ethan hesitantly shook the man's hand with his good one, trying not to wse as the movement sent a twinge of pain through his injured palm. "What's your name?" Ironhead asked. "Ethan." "Where you from, Ethan?" Ethan looked down at his shoes. "Nowhere special. Just passing through." Ironhead nodded slowly. "Sarah says you told the cops you're 18 and headed to your uncle's. That true?" Heat rose in Ethan's face. He opened his mouth to defend the lie, but something in Ironhead's eyes made him stop. This man would know if he was lying again. "No, sir," he admitted. "I'm 16. I ran away from home. My dad." Ethan trailed off, not wanting to say more. Ironhead seemed to understand anyway. "You got a place to stay tonight, Ethan?" "I'll find somewhere," Ethan said, trying to sound confident. The big man turned and nodded to the other bikers. One by one, they approached Ethan. Each one shook his hand or patted his shoulder. Some mumbled, "Thanks." Others just nodded with respect in their eyes. These were men most people crossed the street to avoid, but they were treating Ethan like he was one of them. A shorter biker with a red beard pulled out a wad of cash from his vest pocket. "We took up a collection," he said, pressing the money into Ethan's good hand. "Enough for a bus ticket anywhere you want to go. A place to stay. Food." Ethan stared at the money, more than he'd ever held before. I can't take this," he stammered. "You can and you will," Ironhead said firmly. "Hell's Angels take care of their own, and anyone who helps our family becomes family." The other bikers murmured their agreement, nodding and crossing tattooed arms over their chests. "Besides," Ironhead continued, "Sarah would never forgive me if I let the guy who saved her sleep on the street." He placed a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder. My brother owns a garage in town. He's looking for an apprentice, someone to learn the business. Room above the shop. Comes with the job. Ethan looked up at the man, not sure if he was hearing. Right, you do that for me. You don't even know me. I know enough, Ironhead said. I know you put yourself between my daughter and a knife. That tells me all I need to know about who you are. For the first time in days, maybe years, Ethan felt something like hope spark inside him. It was small and fragile, but it was there, warming him from within. The morning sun broke through the clouds. As Ethan stood surrounded by the bikers, their leather vests gleamed with patches and pins, each telling a story Ethan couldn't yet read. The hospital parking lot had dried from last night's rain, steam rising from the warm pavement as the day grew brighter. What do you say, kid? Ironhead asked. You want to stick around? Learn a trade? Ethan looked at the money in his hand, then at the group of men who'd given it to him. Men with hard faces and kind eyes. Men who'd built their own kind of family when the world had been tough on them. I don't know much about cars, Ethan admitted. A biker with gray hair and a scar across his cheek laughed. That's why it's called learning, boy. Nobody's born knowing how to change oil. Sarah appeared from inside the hospital, walking over to stand by her father. She smiled at Ethan, her eyes still tired, but no longer scared. You should stay, she said. My uncle, Pete's cool. He taught me how to ride a dirt bike when I was 10. Ethan thought about the $27 in his pocket, about the bus station and all the miles between here and anywhere else, about his dad's angry fists and his little sister Emma, who he'd promised to send for once he got settled somewhere safe. I think, Ethan said slowly, I'd like to learn about cars. A cheer went up from the bikers, deep voices calling out welcomes and slapping Ethan on the back. For a moment, he worried his stitches might tear from all the handshakes, but he couldn't stop smiling. First things first, Ironhead said when the noise died down. Let's get you some breakfast. No one thinks straight on an empty stomach. They took him to a diner, not Joe's, but a place called Rusty's, where the waitresses knew all the bikers by name. Ethan ate his first real meal in days. Pancakes stacked 4 high, eggs sunny side up, and bacon crisp around the edges. The food filled his stomach, and the company filled something else, a hungry space inside him that had been empty for too long. After breakfast, they rode to Pete's auto shop. Ethan sat behind Ironhead on his huge motorcycle, holding on tight as they rumbled through town. The wind rushed past his face, and for the first time since leaving home, he didn't look over his shoulder, didn't worry about who might be following. Pete turned out to be Ironhead's younger brother, a man with the same build, but fewer tattoos and a friendly smile that put Ethan at ease right away. The garage smelled of oil and metal and hard work. Cars in various states of repair filled the bays, their parts spread out like puzzles waiting to be solved. You any good with your hands? Pete asked, then spotted Ethan's bandage and laughed. Well, hand other one will heal. I used to fix things at home, Ethan said. Broken door hinges, leaky faucets, whatever needed doing. Pete nodded, satisfied. That'll do for a start. You can sweep up today. Watch what the guys are doing. Tomorrow, we'll see what you remember. The room above the garage was small but clean. It had a bed with fresh sheets, a desk, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the street. Ethan set his backpack down. Everything he owned in the world fit inside it and sat on the edge of the bed. It's not much, Pete said from the doorway. But it's yours as long as you need it. Bathrooms down the hall. Kitchen downstairs has a fridge you can use. Thank you, Ethan said, his voice thick with feeling. For all of this, Pete shrugged. You saved my niece. Far as I'm concerned, your family now. He turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Ironhead wanted me to give you this. He handed Ethan a cell phone. Old, but in good shape. It's got all our numbers in it. Any trouble, day or night, you call. Someone will come. After Pete left, Ethan lay back on the bed, the events of the past 24 hours spinning in his head, from sleeping in a doorway to having a room, a job, and people who cared if he was safe. It didn't seem real. He opened the phone and found Emma's number in his contacts. He'd memorized it before leaving home. His finger hovered over the call button as he wondered what to say, how to explain everything that had happened. In the end, he kept it simple. It's me. I'm okay. I found a place. Good people. I'm going to send you a bus ticket as soon as I save up. Just hang on a little longer. Outside the window, the sun climbed higher in the sky. Below in the garage, the sounds of tools and friendly voices filled the air. Ethan's hand still hurt from where the knife had cut him, but for the first time in years, he felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. Sometimes, he thought, you find family in the most unexpected places. Sometimes it takes a single moment of